I'm here to talk about our economy, what's going on out there, and how we can do a better job of bringing people in off the sidelines into work. They're needed. Right now, we do have an incredibly strong economy. We just learned that in the first quarter of this year, the economy grew by 3.2%. That's strong and way above expectations. In fact, when you look at the expectations that were set by the Congressional Budget Office, which is a nonpartisan group that analyzes, what's going to happen in the economy going forward, when you look at what they said prior to the tax bill being signed into law, this is the tax reform and tax cuts from 2017, the end of 2017, they said this first quarter growth would be 1.6%. So it's interesting, it was exactly twice the economic growth than was projected before the tax bill. By the way, before the tax bill, they also made a projection on jobs. And we have produced over the last year just about exactly twice as many jobs, a little more than that, than was projected. So the tax cuts, the tax reform has worked, along with regulatory relief, to give this economy a shot in the arm, and that's so important. I will say, Mr. Chairman, that when you look at what happened in this first quarter of this year, the 3.2% is great, but it would have been even better had we not shut down the government. And I say that because we have some new numbers from the Congressional Budget Office that says that the level of GDP this first quarter would have been 0.2% more if we had not had the government shutdown, which was the longest government shutdown in the history of our country, late last year. So it would have been 3.6% instead of 3.2%. Wow, that would be terrific. And I guess I bring that up only because I think it's time for us to, again, prepare for the potential of us having another impasse here at the end of this fiscal year on September 30, and I hope that we will avoid going into another government shutdown. It just doesn't make sense. It's shooting ourselves in the foot. There is legislation called the End Government Shutdowns Act. Almost all my colleagues on this side of the aisle have now sponsored that legislation. It makes a lot of sense. It just avoids us going into a shutdown, but still allows us to continue to move forward on our spending and over time reduce that spending until we get our act together and do the appropriations bills here. So good news, again, on the first quarter, good news in terms of job growth. The other thing that I think is really important, and maybe the most important statistic of all, is the fact that wages are going up for the first time in a decade. Really, in Ohio, for a decade and a half, we've had flat wages. Higher expenses, but flat wages. Really frustrating to families who are working hard, doing everything right, and can't get ahead. Now we've seen, over the last year, wage increases. 3.4% wage increase, the strongest we've seen since the Great Recession. And I love the fact that this wage growth is happening not just among higher paid individuals, but primarily actually among what's called non-supervisory employees. That's how the Department of Labor terms it. But these are blue-collar jobs. These are middle-class jobs. These are jobs, people who, again, have had a tough time making ends meet. I know in my state, most people work paycheck to paycheck, and it's great to have that higher wage coming in. We passed tax reform because we believed it was the right thing to do for our economy, for employers, for investment, and we've seen that positive impact. I've had over 24 town hall meetings, roundtable discussions in my state talking to employers, usually smaller businesses, about what happened to them with regard to tax reform. Every single one of them says the same thing. We've reinvested in the business. We've invested in technology, in new equipment. We've invested in our people. In some cases, that means better benefits. In 2 cases, small businesses acknowledged to me that they weren't providing health care before the tax cuts. Now they are because of the savings from the tax cut. They've also invested in people's 401ks and other benefits. So that's what's happening out there in terms of the business side of the tax reform and tax cuts. There is also, in addition to that, a lot of Americans who now have more of their hard-earned money coming home. Their paychecks are better because of the middle-class tax cuts that are in the legislation. For Ohio, this amounted to $2,000 per year on average for the median income family. So I know there's been a lot of discussion on this floor by others saying, well, really, these tax cuts didn't happen. Yeah, they did. They did. That's a fact. Most people I represent have seen a tax cut, and a lot of those individuals saw their overall tax liability go down, not just that their monthly checks were better, but on April 15th, they had better news. Let me give you some facts about that. According to H&R Block, which is probably the firm that handles more middle-class tax returns than any firm in the country, H&R Block reports that the average Ohioan saw a 23.3% decrease in their overall tax bill in 2018. This is from H&R Block. They also said that there is a 2.3% increase in the average refund in Ohio. So I know there's been a lot of discussion about this back and forth, and early on people are concerned about the refunds. These are the numbers. These are the facts from H&R Block. Overall, about 90% of middle-class Americans received a tax cut in 2018, which means more money in their pockets to pay down student debt, to save for retirement, to take a long-awaited family vacation, to be able, again, to achieve whatever their dream is in life. So the economy is growing, creating jobs, and wages are rising. That's all good news. But with more jobs, there's a problem that's developed, and that's a lack of workers. I can't go anywhere in Ohio, and I just had a bunch of meetings in Ohio talking about this, where people don't tell me we don't have enough qualified workers to fill the jobs that we have. Some people call it the skills gap, and that's true in Ohio. We got a mismatch between the skills that are out there, the skills that people have who are looking for jobs, and the jobs that are available. If you go on Ohio Means Jobs right now, you'll see about 145,000 jobs being offered. These are good jobs when you look at them. A lot of them, though, require a certain level of skill. Some are information technology jobs, coding jobs. Some are skilled manufacturing jobs like machining or welding. Some of the jobs are in bioscience, healthcare jobs, technicians. The problem is we don't have the people who have the skills to fill those jobs. That's a shame for those individuals that aren't achieving their hopes in life because they aren't getting these good jobs, and certainly for our economy, it would be even stronger if we had more people to fill those jobs. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Department of Labor, 7.3 million U.S. jobs are currently vacant, again, largely because of the shortage of qualified workers. The National Skills Coalition estimates that nearly half of all jobs openings between now and 2022 will be what they call middle skill jobs. This means jobs that require education beyond high school, like a certificate program, but not a four-year degree. The supply of skilled workers in this category, students pursuing post-high school certification, still falls way short of what the industry demand is. This is why career and technical education is so important. CTE is part of the answer to this. If you're in high school and looking for an opportunity, check out your career and technical academy, or some high schools that's combine many high schools together in one CTE program. It's a great opportunity. It'll give you the knowledge and training necessary to succeed in your career. I'm the co-founder and the co-chair of what's called the Senate CTE Caucus. We've been working to raise awareness to this issue, and so many of my colleagues have now joined this caucus because they go home and they see the same thing. How do we help connect hardworking Ohioans to good-paying jobs? How do we strengthen these CTE programs to make them more affordable and more accessible? One answer is legislation recently reintroduced by Senator Tim Kaine and myself. It's called the Jobs Act. It's really very simple. It says we should be allowed to use Pell Grants, not just to pay for college, but to pay for shorter-term certificate programs. These have to be qualified programs, programs that provide real credentials to people. Right now with the Pell Grant, if it's a program of less than 15 weeks, you can't use it. So low-income students all over the country are told, you can go to college, that's great. We're going to encourage you to do that, incentivize you to do that, but you can't get this short-term training program that can get you the job right away. In Ohio, if those students graduate, and most don't, but if they do, their average debt is $27,000. As compared to, again, the opportunity to go through the short-term training program, get the job, and begin to make money, to buy the car, to be able to buy a small home, or at least to rent an apartment and not be in your parents' basement, to be able to move ahead with your life and your family. So career and technical is a great opportunity, and the Jobs Act would make it much more likely that people would take that opportunity. By the way, the community colleges around the country love the Jobs Act. I believe it's their top priority this year. Why? Because so many of them are now offering these certificate-based programs because they're responding to the needs of the community and what the businesses are telling them they need. It's going to be different in every community, by the way, and that's good. There's no one-size-fits-all. In some communities in Ohio, because we're a big manufacturing state, it is welding, it is machining. In other places around the country, it might be something else. It might be for the fishing industry, the oil and gas industry, or bioscience. All across Ohio, I've seen how these programs are working and could work even better if we had the Jobs Act. Last week, I toured Venture Products. It's a family-owned company that designs and makes tractors. They make an incredible product called the Ventrac. They've got a really impressive facility, and it was great to see them and their success. The company's benefited from tax reform and has made additional investments in its business and its workers with their tax savings, just like all these companies that I've gone to visit all over our state. But after the tour of the company, we had a roundtable discussion. It was with educators, people from the local community college, career and technical education folks who came in, also business people, and people from the area who are involved in economic development, because they're very concerned that without the workforce, they can't expand the businesses in this community in Ohio. We talked about the need to strengthen CTE programs, and we talked about the Jobs Act. And all of them agreed this would be really helpful and helpful right now. I also had a visit at the Central Ohio Technical College. The investiture ceremony took place last Thursday, and I had the chance to meet the new president, Dr. John Berry, and there's a lot of exciting things happening at this career and technical college. They work very closely with Ohio State, which is terrific. So you have Ohio State, a four-year college, and a great series of graduate programs working directly with these community colleges that focuses on skills training. They're expanding their programming, which will help meet the needs of today's workforce. The Jobs Act, according to them, would greatly benefit the students who are using these shorter-term programs to put them on the path to a good-paying job. In Walnut Creek, Ohio, I spoke at the Eastern Ohio Development Alliance's annual meeting in Hocking County. This is representing counties from all over eastern and southeastern Ohio. We talked about a lot of things, including the shortage of skilled workers, because it comes up again and again. In this case, Ohio has this wonderful opportunity with the Marcellus and the Utica shale find to develop our natural gas and our wet gas and our oil industry, but they need workers. And we don't want to have workers coming in from out of state, frankly. We want to develop our own Ohio workforce. And we can only do that with skills training, because a lot of these jobs require skills that are not available in Ohio today. In Columbus last week, I spoke at a reentry conference. This is an annual conference talking about how to get people going from prison into our communities, the job skills they need, and the mental health and drug treatment they need to be successful. Again, it all came down to this issue of workforce training being so important, both because it helps people to get a job and not go back into the prison system, but also because getting a job is an essential part of so many successful recovery programs for people who have drug and alcohol addiction and want to be able to participate in our economy. This gives them meaning and purpose in life and helps with their recovery. I was in Knox County at a roundtable discussion. Again, in this case, it was with first responders, local elected officials, and leadership of their mental health and recovery organization there. Their board there is focused on dealing with the crystal meth problem. It's almost pushed the opioid problem to the second most troubling drug problem in the community. They still have overdoses from opioids. They're still concerned about that, but crystal meth has now come in with a vengeance, pure crystal meth from Mexico. Their big issue is how do you get people into recovery and successful recovery? And again, the issue of job training came up. How do you get people the skills they need to get a job? And how do you incorporate job skills in a recovery program, again, so people have a reason to turn their life around, to get back with their family? That purpose and meaning comes from a job so often. So it was an opportunity to talk about the need for us to develop the workforce to meet the needs of our communities, and an opportunity to talk about the need for the Jobs Act. I'm really pleased that the Jobs Act is in the President's budget this year. I thank President Trump and his administration for including that. It makes all the sense in the world. The higher education bill will be reauthorized this year, we all hope. That's certainly the plan. If that happens, it's the perfect place for having the Jobs Act included. Senator Kaine of Virginia and I are the co-authors of this legislation. We are hopeful that our colleagues on both sides of the aisle will join us on this legislation and help us to get it in the Higher Education Act. I know that it's a priority of many members of that committee, and Chairman Alexander in particular has a passion for ensuring that we have the training we need out there to get people the jobs that let them achieve their dreams in life. So, Mr. President, passing the Jobs Act will give us an opportunity to help so many Americans have better opportunities. And just as importantly, it would enable us to help our economy right now, because the biggest concern I hear is no longer the taxes. People love the tax cuts and the tax reform. They love the regulatory relief, but they're looking for skilled workers. This is an opportunity. Let's seize it. Let's keep growing our economy and help Americans fulfill their God-given potential. I yield back my time.